webinar of 2021. I'm your host, Sven Spahn-Berns. I work with the Small Firms Association, and today we're discussing trends and insights for a changing business environment in 2021. We're looking at the realities for retail in particular and for business in general, how to maintain customer connections, and what is the way forward in terms of strategic and tactical planning. Joining me on the panel are Duncan Graham, Managing Director of Retail Excellence Ireland, and Miriam Simon, Business Mentor and founder of the Retail Powerhouse. Between the two of them, we cover nearly every corner of the Irish and international retail scene. Miriam, you've worked with River Island, B&Q, Monsoon, Lifestyle Sports and TK Maxx, and you've been called Island Answer to Mary Porter's. Duncan, you've worked with Marks and Spencer, Brown Thomas, Specsavers, just to name a few. So a real impressive know-how of the international and Irish retail scene here on the panel. Before we kick off, just for you as our participants, feel free to ask questions using the chat box, and we'll do our best to answer them as we go along. And just to let you know that the webinar is recorded, and you're going to be able to listen back to it by checking out the Champion Green website. So let's get started. Last year was obviously a year like no other, a real roller coaster ride to say the least. At the end of last year, retailers were delighted to be open again for the all-important Christmas trade, only to be shut down again right after Christmas. Let's throw in Brexit in the mix with supply chain challenges and many others, together with additional uncertainty in relation to the length of the COVID restrictions, changing consumer behaviours, online versus bricks and mortar, the list goes on, and we have a real challenging year 2021 ahead of us. Duncan, to you first, can you summarise for us the current retail landscape and how the various sectors fared over Christmas and the New Year? There's a likely retail opening scenario in the short term there.
Yeah, morning, Sven. You sort of touched on it then when you said roller coaster year, and what a roller coaster year it was. It felt like it was an emotional roller coaster. It felt like it was an operational roller coaster. You know, it was a very, very difficult year, and of course this year has not started off particularly any better. Although I think, you know, we can sit here and say there is some light at the end of the tunnel with the vaccinations and so forth. I think to sort of give you a flavour of what's going on, I think let's go back to what happened in the summer when we reopened the first time, because I think if you take last year, we were all wearing the green jersey a bit, weren't we, in March, April time. I think that was, you know, we'll get through this, we'll get open, we'll move forward, you know, we'll take the pain, if you like. And I think what we saw in the summer was a really strong reopening, and particularly in areas like, you know, DIY and food and, you know, all of those areas where we'd spent time in the house. We wanted to do something with the house. We wanted to do something with the garden. You know, all of those areas performed really, really well. And retail bounced back a bit. I think we found that we missed that bit of retail therapy. And then, of course, we went into the lockdown in December. And, you know, that was a real kicker because, you know, it was the first time we really got into this essential versus non-essential debate and what category you stood in and all this sort of thing. So it was particularly difficult. And of course, it was at a time when we were all, you know, it's that important time, that run up to Christmas. And, you know, I guess the only positive point out of all of that was in that last lockdown, we had that December the 1st opening date that everybody was pretty much geared towards. That was what was being talked about by government pretty much from the off, yeah? And so when we did reopen on the 1st of December, from December 1 to December 24 was really strong. You know, most retailers were coming back and going, had a great time. You know, you look at the queues outside of Penny's when people opened up and all that sort of thing. You know, it was a very strong period on the run up to Christmas. And it was not only a strong period in bricks and mortar, but it was also a strong period online. You know, we'd had the Green Friday, you know, the Champion Green Friday, if you like, which had gone off really well, you know, at the end of November. I know we weren't trading physically at that point, but there was a real shift. So there was a real emphasis on online and physical retailing, you know, working together. And, you know, people saw a big drive. And of course, the other bit was that customers at that time were coming in on a mission. So they weren't browsing around for long periods of time. They were coming in, they were getting what they wanted, and they were leaving. And then, of course, we had this really surreal period over Christmas where it became pretty obvious that we'd got a UK variant, and the case numbers were flying through the roof. And I remember the 28th of December being on one of the radio programs, and the government were meeting, and they said, is non-essential retail going to shut? And the government said no, and then literally 48 hours later had announced the fact that it was going to shut down again. So that period between Christmas and New Year was a damp squib. The government had said no sale. There was a bit of business being done, but it was difficult. It was really difficult. And then, of course, we were back into lockdown 3 on New Year's Eve. If you fast forward from that, the difficulty that we currently have is there's no sort of 1st of December reopening date that's coming up. It's very much everybody, the government are talking around end of January, but the reality behind all of this is it's going to be well into February, March, potentially even into April before we see a lifting of this. And, the government aren't being drawn at the moment. We're on regular calls with them, but they're not being drawn on the reopening plan at this moment in time. And I guess that's understandable when you've got the numbers in ICU, you've got the numbers in hospital. That's where their priority is. And what we're trying to do at the moment is really go, look, that's fine, but, we absolutely get it, and everybody's in the same boat. But, we do need that date, that, what is it that the number needs to drop to? Is it 100 cases a day? Is it 0? Is it 500? What is that? And how many vaccinations need to be done before things start to become safe? So I think, we need that first. We then need the supports in place to keep businesses going. So the EWSS, the COVID Recovery Support Scheme, the CRSS, another dose of the online retail scheme, the restart grants. We need all of that in place, and we need that to be running well until the middle of this year, if not beyond, to give retailers some certainty into the future. And then I think the final point I'd say, Sven, before you asked Miriam in, I think the final point I'd say is the positivity behind all of this is once we've got through this next period, is I think that retail is going to bounce back big time. And I know, people, if you go back 100 years, Sven, yeah, and you and I certainly weren't around at that point, but remember the Roaring 20s? Well, this is the Roaring 20s that we're about to go into again. How long it's going to last, who knows? But I certainly think the end of this year is going to be very, very strong. And, we're all going to be wearing that little black dress again. Well, not me personally, but, we will be into that space. And, it's going to be big occasion wear, it's going to be big online, it's going to be, big bricks and mortar, and we're all going to want to be entertained in our shops. So I think the future, once we get through this, the short-term future is looking really bright. How that then beds down over the next sort of, 2023, 24, 25, who knows? But I think the next 18 months or so is going to be good.
So thank you, Duncan. I think it's really important in being in mid-January, we just had so-called Blue Monday behind us, that there is this sense of optimism, that there is this realistic optimism out there that the retail sector will bounce back. And that's maybe a good point to bring you in, Miriam, and what your vision, or what is your, where do you see the light at the end of the tunnel for the retail sectors, and how can retailers identify and develop new opportunities?
Well, I'll give you the doom and then the opportunity. So I'll give you the gloomy bit first. So just to put some manners on the situation that we're in at the moment. So the very first case of COVID in Ireland was on the 29th of February in 2020. And between the 29th of February and the 29th of November, which is basically the guts of the year, there were 72,000 cases of COVID. In the first 20 days of this year, we've had over 80,000 cases. So that kind of gives us, maybe some understanding of why we're not being given a clear reopening plan. So the gloom bit is, do I think we're going to be reopening in February? No, I don't. I think Q1 is going to be from behind closed doors for most retail. However, so that's the gloom. but actually the huge opportunity here is so many of our retailers nationwide have now got e-commerce, have now lent into social commerce, which is growing at a massive rate. Social commerce and this whole blended model is going to be very much the future. And alongside that, you know, we've seen our city centres a little bit decimated, and Dublin in particular, what we've seen is basically an instant decentralisation happened last year. But what that actually does also mean is that across the arteries of our country, there are huge groups of new customers for SME retailers to market, to target, to attract, to get to know, basically. So if you think there were 30,000 people a day commuting from Kildare into Dublin, there were 15,000 people commuting in from Dundalk and Drogheda. Those people are now working from home and now looking to their local markets. So there's massive opportunity. So, you know, for the SME retailers who are, you know, in the arteries of Ireland, the opportunity is huge here for you to maybe use this time to really reach out and go through this with the customer and connect with the customer in quite an authentic way and on an emotional level, and actually to get to know the new customers, because for a lot of towns and villages across this country, there's a whole new group of customers that aren't really, you know, may not have previously been aware of what the retail proposition was around them. So I do see there being huge opportunities across the arteries of the country to really galvanise retail. And even for the larger estates, you know, they should really be looking to the conurbations and the larger conurbations across the country as part of the reopening strategy. Now, I'd agree with Duncan, it would be really helpful if we had, I remember for the first lockdown, Brad Carr laid out, this is what the reopening will look like. If we had a plan like that, even if we didn't have dates put on it, but we knew that this will be the plan, that at least gives our retail population something to work with. Hopefully maybe February, you know, if the numbers come down fast, and we're beginning to see the numbers start to come down now, thankfully, but if the numbers start to come down quickly, hopefully we'll get click and collect back up in action, please God, in February, and then we can talk. But like there is still an opportunity to trade if you can deliver and you can fulfill, you can still trade throughout this period. And I think it's really important to use January particularly to plan for Q4, because it will be massive, and plan now for Q4, and also to think about how you can connect really authentically with your customers, both your current customers and find this new customer that's in your area.
Great, thanks, Miriam. I'm just gonna quote from a report that Revolut published recently that shows that our shopping habits appear to have changed over the past year. And forgive me, I'm going to quote a few numbers now. So in December last year, so December 2020, of the 100% shopping, 64% took place in the shops, which is down from 75% in 2019, which means 36% in 2020 was spent online. And even when the shops reopened this December, 46% of our spending on sportswear still took place online. So did 44% of spending in bookshops, 45% spending on florists, and 72% of our spending on child or baby clothes. So to the good news, out of the 36% online spend, 43% was spent with Irish firms and 57% went to overseas websites. So this is a significant improvement in terms of money being spent with Irish websites, because the number in 2019 was 35%. So, however, that demonstrates, Duncan, a major shift in retail, and how will this online shopping versus physical store dynamic be reconciled, and what are the lessons learned that might improve retail and customer experience going forward?
Yeah, look, it's interesting listening to those figures, isn't it? And you know, I think first off, in terms of the move to local that you mentioned there, and the move to shopping online with local retailers, for example, you know, I think we have to congratulate things like the Champion Green initiative for stimulating quite a lot of that. You know, and I think the Irish public have very much worn the green jersey. I know we haven't touched on Brexit much yet, but you know, if you look at what's going on just at the moment, you know, and the additional costs of doing business with the UK online, for example, I'm sure everybody's discovered, you know, amazon.de as opposed to amazon.co.uk. And even better if you discovered, you know, so-and-so.ie around the corner from you, you know, which is what's really important here. So, you know, I think that, you know, those, you know, the Brexit impact of some of this will mean that, you know, going forward, when we're going online, we will be looking at those, you know, those people around us. And if you think about, you know, there was something like 11 million of a grant, of 2 lots of grants last year spent for online. So, you know, these were government grants to Enterprise Ireland. They were called the Online Retail Scheme. And, you know, there's something like, you know, 150 odd retailers on the last one that you know, availed of these grants. So there's a lot of local businesses that have moved their offers online. You know, I think that there's almost been a bit of a lack of understanding on the government's part that you can't just flick a switch and move online straight away. You know, it does take time, and you know, it's probably 3 or 4 months to get something up and running reasonably. You know, for most retailers, get all your product, you know, get your catalogue launched on a website and so forth. So, you know, there's been some significant change going on last year, but there's no doubt that retailers are starting to benefit from that, as those numbers point out, you just mentioned. I think how it moves forward, I think is going to be really interesting. And everything I'm reading is suggesting that there's going to be more and more a sort of blurring of the lines between physical and digital. Yeah. So it's what I think one of the guys we do some work with, Matthew Brown, talks around this phygital retail. Yeah. Which is this blurring of the lines between the two. And what I mean by that is, you know, traditionally we've gone online because we've gone to look for something. Yeah. And traditionally, when you go online, you know, the ability to showcase product hasn't been that good. You've gone and looked at a product and you've maybe clicked on it, added to a cart and bought it. Yeah. So where you can showcase a product, where you can present a brand, has been in store, hasn't it? You know, the websites have done a bit of it, but you know, you've really gone to the store to really get that understanding of the brand. Yeah. I think you're going to find, you know, examples of retailers who are going to be going, you know, here's my brand, it's showcased in a store, yeah, but actually, you know, you might want to go and click on the link and buy it when you get home. Yeah, so there's less of actual physically buying going on in store and more showcasing of the product in store, and people then going and buying it online. I think we'll see a lot more of people going in, you know, for clothing shops and things like that. I think we'll see a lot more of people going in, looking at something, maybe making the purchase on their phone or in the store, but it gets then delivered, you know, so that when you finished your shopping trip and you arrive back home, the parcels are waiting for you because they've been delivered by your courier company or something. So you won't be carrying loads of bags around town with you. So I think that blurring of lines, and I think the people that will be successful are the real tech savvy, you know, omni-channel retailers who have got those, you know, physical presence, online presence, and can really exploit the tech and the social media and everything that goes with it. So there's a real shift. And actually what's happened, I think, over the last year or so, particularly with the last year, is that retail has become a lot more complex. You know, the opportunities to touch base with the consumer have become a lot more complex. And therefore the skills, and we'll talk about this maybe towards the end, but the skills that people need are more detailed than they were. You know, much more complex set of skills we need now than we did maybe in 2019. So, you know, I think there's a lot of that that will happen. And then, you know, I think the other bit to say is many people talk around, is bricks and mortar coming to the end? Is it all going to go online? And, and I think the reopenings have said that that's clearly not the case. We love our retail therapy, but you know what? We want to be entertained. We absolutely want to be entertained when we go into town. So, if you look at the things that have failed recently, it's those, dare I say it, some of those UK brands like Arcadia and Debenhams and so forth, where you've simply got the same type of product in the department store. You'll find it on the, when you come out of the department store, you turn right, you've got the same offer on the high street. It's all become far too samey, yeah? And what the consumer's going to demand, customer's going to demand, is to be entertained. So we want to walk into town centres, we want to have the hospitality, the restaurant, the bar, the well-promoted brands, something that's really telling a story to you when you walk in, something that you can really feel familiar with. And then you want this blended approach in terms of how you buy it. And that's what I think is going to emerge out of all of this. It's going to take time, but I think it's going to be a very, very different retail environment that we're facing into than the one we left in 2019.
I saw you're nodding in sync with what Duncan said. Is that your view as well, that this might be the future of the retail sector?
Very much so. So I think it's really important to note that in the last 12 months, we've probably seen about 8 years of digitalization has happened in a year due to COVID. And it's really important to remember that retail is a reflection of life, not the other way around. So that's really key. The futurist Doug Stevens, I follow quite a lot of his stuff, and he talks very much of we are now, and I'm going to quote him, we are now at the end of the beginning of e-commerce. So we may think that, brilliant, we're all online now, but this is really just the real beginning. And I do think the physical store is going to come back with a passion, and it's going to come back fighting. And actually, I agree wholeheartedly with Duncan. It's actually about experience, but not just experience, also trust. So we have seen a lot of, and particularly UK legacy retailers go to the wall over the last year. And I also think it's really important to say that a little bit like with COVID for humans, if you had an underlying condition, you were very, very at risk with COVID. So a lot of those legacy retailers were in great difficulty before we had a pandemic. And they had maybe over the years become cash cows, so to speak, where it was about mass volume. And our consumers are smart. They're just not going to wear that anymore. So it's going to be about experience, but it's also going to be about trust. And we saw, I did some talks prior to the pandemic that were about future trends, and this whole circular economy piece and the conscious consumer. Now that took a back seat last year because we all had bigger fish to fry, so to speak, with the pandemic. But we're going to see a massive return to that this year. People are going to be very, very, conscious about where they're spending their money. So it is experience and trust. The store is going to be just as important, but actually, and again, agree wholeheartedly with Duncan, it is going to be this blended approach. The future is blended, and the skill set needed is going to be a lot more complex and a lot more digital. So social commerce, I spoke to a retailer a couple of weeks ago who was just, I don't do social media. You actually can't not do social media anymore, whether it's your preference or not. Social media is probably the biggest channel for retail at the moment, if we're really honest. So it's that whole blending between social, digital and store, and that's only going to get faster. So so all of you need to get on Instagram and TikTok. Sorry, you do. You do.
Sven, can I just jump in? Because I think just to add to what Miriam just been there, apart from the fact I'm not on TikTok yet.
I'm not either, but I need to be.
But just something I saw recently. I'll just read you part of this quote, and it's from Anne Pitcher, who's the MD of Selfridges, because I think Selfridges is a really good example. I mean, you talk about pressure that department stores are under, but Selfridges is just one that's coming out fighting. But she talks around, you talk about this sort of sustainability and all of that, but she's also talking around this whole subject. She says, I don't think it's as simple as shopping online and not walking into stores anymore. She says, I think consumers will shop with businesses they trust, that they care, that know that they care, businesses that they feel are their friends or that they can relate to, businesses that choose to do the right thing over making money, and businesses that are transparent in the way they do business, right? So that was her view. And I think, I'd echo, I think that really does, for me, sum up what is going on, this need to really get close to customers. And the final point I'd say about this, over this COVID period, it's not been around necessarily customer service. It's been around customer care first and foremost. Unless you feel comfortable and cared for when you walk into a store, and safe, let's absolutely feel safe. That's the first and foremost thing that's been apparent for consumers, and I think that's going to continue for some time. Sorry, Miriam.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning the consumer. And I'm just gonna just briefly quote from a headline in the Irish Times today, quoting a new report from Deloitte Ireland, where it says the Irish are the most anxious consumers in Europe in terms of their shopping behaviour at the moment, and their willingness or lack of willingness to spend money in these difficult times, whilst they are sitting on buckets of cash at the moment. Some of them are a bit anxious to spend it. Miriam, you mentioned the consumer on a few occasions. How do you think, just in general, how will the consumers emerge from all of this, and what are the new consumer expectations, and what does it mean for the retailers, what they should anticipate?
So I think really it goes back to that whole connection. So there are a lot of retailers that had a fantastic year last year. There are a lot of retailers that had a fantastic year last year, and they were the businesses that stayed connected with their customer, and I mean really connected, like emotionally connected, and we're going through the pandemic with their customers. So I think I'm not sure, like historically as a nation, shopping is one of our biggest recreations and sports, let's be honest. So I think sometimes stats are just that, stats. So for example, you spoke about sportswear, that more people are buying that online than going into store. Now, I'm not sure that's about consumer behavior per se. That's potentially more around the big brands, because sportswear is dominated by some big brands who have their own agenda that is very direct to consumer. So stats are just stats. So that's the first thing I would say. We are a nation of shoppers. We love shopping as a nation, but we won't shop just for the sake of it. So people are buying with more purpose now, and they need to trust the brands that they're buying from. And there was a great example. Duncan and I were talking about this yesterday. Patagonia. For example, Patagonia have just updated their website so that Patagonia, it's outdoor clothing, and it's all about quality, but it's all about ethical, and it's all about protecting the planet. So on their website going forward, you will be able to buy the product either full price or second hand. Now, so they're going to start selling used goods as well as prime goods on their website. Now, they are way ahead of the curve, because this is a little bit of how some of retail is going. Although that might sound unusual, the halo effect they get, because it reinforces the quality of their product hugely, the fact that it can be resold and you can buy new or used. So I think shopping is just going to change. Our wants are going to change. So at the moment, we're all buying track pants and comfortable clothes. But come September, the sparkles will be back. I'm still trying to get the image of Duncan in a little black dress out of my head here, but the sparkles and the heels will be back. This will be, Q4 for those who have planned effectively. It's going to be huge, and it's going to be very dressy. The consumer is still going to shop, but you need to give them a reason to shop, and you need to engage with the consumer. You can't just expect people to buy for the sake of buying anymore. So so Patagonia, I think, is a really good example. Harrods over the last 4 years have done a pop-up you know, used goods, or, you know, vintage store. It's not used goods, vintage is the word. So we're going to see a lot more premium brands emerge with vintage sections, because that's more ethical. It's very much more what our consumers want, and it's very much the David Attenborough effect. We're all very concerned about what's happening to our planet, and that is going to come to the forefront. Likewise, you're going to see a lot more subscription model retail appearing. We're going to stop buying things that we can rent. So you don't need to own a chocolate fondue set. You only need it for the day of the birthday party. Do you know? You don't need the, you know. So there's going to be a lot more products that we will rent instead of buy, short-term rent instead of buy. And you can see that the last few years, we've seen an explosion of quite big companies starting to emerge that are all about rent not buy models. So that's still retail. Do you know, those people still sell full price products also. So I think we're going to see some new models emerging in retail over the next few years. It could be faster than that. What we've seen in the last year is that everything is accelerating.
So in order for us to be able to see Duncan in this rent not buy black dress, Duncan, in the bigger picture of retail regeneration, what needs to happen now to help the renewal of retail and some of our town centres have been decimated?
You're right. And before I answer that, Sven, I just want to tell you a little story, because I think it links in around what's happening at a local level. Because I think Miriam mentioned it earlier, that sort of decentralization piece. So we're moving out of the city centres and shopping very much more locally. And that goes back to the 2K limit of, you know, last year, when we discovered things around us that were fantastic little retailers that we've just passed by in our cars for years beforehand. And now we're discovering them. The little story is that 2 nights ago, I'm sitting there with my wife, we're watching TV or something, and as usual, the WhatsApp message comes in, and it said something around, you know, there's a new fishmonger who's coming up from Waterford into Sandymount, setting up this morning, in Railway Union Sports Club, selling fish from 8 o'clock this morning until 2 o'clock this afternoon, right? Out of the back of a van with a little veg shop next to him, a little veg stall next to him, right? Now, we said we needed to get out of the house this morning. It's less than 5K from where we live. Drove in, parked up, walked in. 8:30 this morning, the queue was probably 35 deep, just from him selling outside off the back of his van, right? Go around the corner from there, we grabbed a coffee in Sandymount, and there's people falling out the doors at the butcher shop, the local butcher shop. Yeah. So all of this stuff we're actually discovering things locally with local retailers that is really important to where things are going to go to the future. And we're not going to forget that. We're not going to forget it in a hurry. And it's going to be those smaller SMEs, you know, the butchers, the fishmongers, the grocers, the greengrocers, you know, and then on a non-food side, you know, the boutique owners, all of that. Those things are going to re-emerge, and we're going to support them because they are around the corner from where we live, and that's really important. But to come back to your point around, you know, what's needed in order to support that in terms of rejuvenation of town centres, I think that there are a few things. I think, as I said before, what we move into is going to bear no resemblance to 2019. So we are going to shop local. I think hospitality is going to become more and more important. So I can see more of our city centres, as we've seen last year, going pedestrianised. I think we will see more, you know, cafes spilling out onto the streets. You know, if we can sit down and have a coffee in November outside the front of our stores, outside the front of coffee shops, as we've had to, yeah, we'll keep doing that in the summer. You know, we will become a lot more European about how we do that, and hopefully the weather will be with us. So I think we'll see a lot of that. But I also think we really do need to be pushing with government to make sure that our towns and city centres get regenerated and renewed. And within that, I think this sort of living over the shop idea, because I think what will happen is store footprints will become a bit smaller as they become a bit more showcasey. Yeah, we won't need the vast stock rooms above shops as we've had before, because a lot of that stockroom space will probably move out of town, or certainly move out of centre. Yeah, and it will be moving out of centre because it will be there for online and delivery. Yeah, so people will be, you know, you'll probably be ordering from something which is a small warehouse area that's set up just, you know, just outside of town somewhere, that's not only supplying the shop but is also supplying online. So that means this space going to emerge, and I think that space above shops is going to be great for rezoning into into residential. And that's the way to bring people back into the city centres, because if we don't do that, we're just going to see, you know, people just continuing to move away. We're not going to be working in town centres like and city centres like we were before, because we've got used to working from home. So we've got to find some way of bringing people back in. Yeah, I think the other bit of this is, you know, back to the point about entertainment. People will want to be entertained when they come into shops, into the city centre. So how do you keep them? Well, you offer them decent food, as we've discussed before. You know, the coffee shops, the bars, the restaurants will all be big over the next few years. But alongside that will be the entertainment of brands meaning something. You know, you'll go in to understand and play with stuff. So tech brands, for example, we want to play with. When we go into department stores, we want to see something different all the time, new brands, new ways of interacting with those brands. You know, we will shop with our smartphone, you know, as much as we shop with our eyes. We'll want all the senses to be engaged. You know, we'll want to smell the bread when we walk into a supermarket, all that sort of stuff. And we really need to work with government in terms of particularly how we regenerate our towns and city centres. The places that I'm really concerned about is the shopping centres, frankly, because, you know, those shopping centres that are stuck with legacy retail will really struggle. And those are the guys that need to adapt. And the final point I'd make on this is pop-up shops, pop-up opportunities. You know, if you're a retailer out there, let's say you're a direct-to-consumer retailer, you know, you're just going online, yeah? You know, pop-up shops will become incredibly good value just to go in and try something and showcase your product for a period of time. You know, new creative designers that want to take a bit of space, like the Jill and Jill thing before Christmas with Champion Green. Opportunities like that, just to simply go in, set something up and see how it goes and promote your brand. Those will be really important. And that's what will attract people into the city centres. So we not only need to work with government on a lot of this, but we also need to work with the property owners. And the property owners are really vital to all of this, because they've got to play ball. They've absolutely got to play ball, because otherwise, you know, if you are a dyed-in-the-wool standing there as a landlord going, you know, I am going to demand this rent off somebody till I'm blue in the face, all that's going to happen is the shutters will come down and you'll be in a lose-lose. If you want to, you know, negotiate and find a deal and work something up, you know, bring in pop-up shops, you know, develop something, then there is future. You know, that's what's going to really drive retail and creativity. And let's face it, I'm sure people on this call, most retailers are incredibly innovative and incredibly creative and incredibly commercial, and that's what's going to get us out of all of this.
Just let's open up to the floor. There's a few questions coming in from our listeners this morning. So one question is around the retail motor industry in Ireland. We're seeing motor dealers across the country doing their best to promote the digital dealership during the lockdown. Are there any tips that you guys could share with these dealers to help them in these tough circumstances? Any words of wisdom?
Ooh, that's an interesting one. Miriam, any thoughts on that?
Do you know what occurs to me? So the future. So there could be a whole other webinar on the future of motor retailing. The future of the motor industry is we're going to see the whole conscious consumer appear on that as well. So it would be not unrealistic to expect that within this decade we will be taxed on our personal carbon footprints. So this is a different webinar for a different day, really. And I think the motor industry is going to be quite key within that. And there's massive innovation happening around LIDAR and radar, and massive innovations that are coming out of Ireland actually at the moment, that are going to help make the motor industry at the forefront of green energy. And I'm not just talking about electric motors here, I'm talking about the way we use cars. In the short term, that doesn't help, but over the next few years, there's some very exciting things about to happen for the motor industry. Yeah, motor industry is a difficult industry. I think there is a piece here about it's not something that you see a lot of online. So the retailers that are ahead of the curve and ahead of their peers and are embracing social commerce, and I actually would talk social commerce before I would talk digital, because we don't necessarily all go and look at websites per se. It is the social commerce, it's social media that usually takes us there. So there is a massive piece, you know, those car dealers that are able to really exploit, and I mean exploit in a really positive way, social commerce, to give the customer or the consumer really great experience and a bit of thrill and a bit of entertainment, because, you know, we're scrolling more than we've ever scrolled, let's be honest, we all are. So I think leaning into social commerce, and that is the key to success here, because that's a lot of your peers aren't doing it. So if you do it, you're going to have more exposure. So, but I would think this is not just about advertising. This is about, again, connecting and engaging fully with the customer.
I just think I remember going into Bangkok a few years ago, walking around a shopping centre in Bangkok, and about on the second floor, I think it was just a showroom of cars, right, in the middle of a shopping centre. And I think that's I know we've seen it here a bit, you know, in terms of, you know, I think on Grafton Street at one point there was a Volvo put a little pop-up shop in place. It's that type of thing I think is the future. I'm not sure, you know, this typical sort of bit of driving around to a big showroom, a big out of town car showroom, a motor showroom. I'm not sure that's the future. I think it's a bit more guerrilla. I think it's a bit more, you know, putting the car in the middle of a shopping centre and having somebody around that can promote it. I think Tesla have got a great way. I mean, you look at the amount of Teslas there are on the road around, certainly in South County Dublin at the moment. You know, every other car's a Tesla. Well, where's the Tesla showroom? I don't see the Tesla showroom particularly. I may be wrong, but I don't see that. So the whole bit around the brand and how the brand's sold, and the online bit, and, you know, it's somebody polling up to your house to take you for a spin in a new car because you're not doing the work. I think that's where it's going to change. You know, I'm not an expert in motor retail, but it's got to move in some direction, and I think it's going to be a lot more like that than it is the old traditional showroom that's, you know, on the edge of town, that's got you know, half a dozen cars in it. I think it's going to be a changed environment.
I would agree.
In terms of, you know, Patagonia really resonated. Your example of Patagonia and how they positioned themselves resonated really well with our participants this morning. There's also a question around secondhand, and are there any other examples of that you have observed, you know, as part of the secondhand trend, or the rent don't buy trend, where you say those particular retailers or brands are doing it really well?
Yeah, Selfridges. Sorry, Selfridges would be one. Miriam, sorry, I cut across you there.
No, go ahead. You finish.
All right. No, Selfridges, I think, is going to be is a really good example of you know, that whole, and I think it's coming from that point of sustainability that Miriam mentioned with Patagonia. You know, it's this. You know, again, I'll quote from Ann Pitcher, who said, "People will care not only about how you do business, but how you place people and the planet at the heart of your thinking." You know, this I think that will be a real emergence. I think, you know, what we're going to face into probably, you know, end of this year and into next year will be the whole climate change debate. Once we've got out of COVID and we're back in, it'll be the whole climate change thing will come down the tracks big time, and that sustainability and link back into the planet, and recycling is going to be massive. Sorry.
And just to add to that, wanted to just over 80% of everything we buy is replenishment. So that's quite a startling fact when you think about it. So we are going to see through further digitalization and through AI, etc. I sound so techie. I'm not remotely techie, but the over 80% of everything we buy is replenishment, and a lot of that sort of stuff is going to become more automatic. But around this whole vintage piece, I'll give you a couple of really good examples. So there are a couple of businesses that will probably be launching products this year. So one of them is the mattress for life, where you can get your mattress, and anybody who's ever had to buy a mattress, this will resonate particularly with the women in the group. No offense, not meaning anything to anybody else, but the biggest pain in the ass when you're buying a mattress is getting rid of the old mattress. So this business, Irish business, fabulous Irish business, have got where you can get a top of the range mattress and you pay a third up for it, and then you pay your subscription, and then every 5 years they come and take away the mattress and they recycle it 100%. You get your certification that it's been recycled so that you feel really good inside, and you get your new mattress, and you never have to worry about buying a mattress ever again. Now that model really, really appeals to Gen Z and millennials who want the good stuff but can't afford it. So another example is, I talked about over 80% of everything we use is replenishment. Over 80% of everything we buy is replenishment. That's quite a startling number, but it is the number. So imagine if you are a retailer and you stock the best work boot you'll never buy. Because for people in construction example, you have your steel cap boots, and they probably do need to be replaced every year. So again, this is another subscription model example. There's examples across nearly every sector where this would apply. And so I do see, a lot of businesses have become digital, and the supports from the Irish government have been fantastic in doing so, but we're going to see more complex models. We're going to see people that are doing more subscription-based models, because those models are very good both for the consumer and for the retailer. Another great example is a bread store who have they're going to be launching their website, and there will be only one product on it, and that one product will be a subscription to their fantastic bread. So what you get is, you get in the post, you get this gorgeous linen bread bag with with your card to go pick up, and you can pick up up to 6 loaves of bread a month. Now that, I think, is bloody genius, because what they're doing is, through a digital channel, they are driving footfall into their premises. So that customer is going to be in their premises 6 times a month to pick up their bread. They're not just going to pick up their bread, they're going to buy their coffee, they're going to buy their breakfast, so we're going to see much more of these more complex models evolve, that are more subscription based or rent not buy.
Just before I let you go, and just go back to the harsh reality of the 20th of January, and obviously the future looks so bright, and we have all very much to look forward to. But in order to get there, what are your final words of wisdom? How retailers can get through this now? What should they be doing now in order to emerge victoriously on the other side? Maybe Miriam, to start with you.
Yeah, well, I have a few top tips for how to keep the lights on right now, so to speak. So the first thing is, make sure that you have really clear, consistent business as usual messaging. And just because you've put that message out once doesn't mean that the whole world saw it. So that messaging needs to be, it needs to be very regular. So you need to be telling your customer, actually both in your physical premises, there needs to be large signage while the doors are closed, but also across all of your channels, you need to be saying, we're still here. We're still here. You can contact us this way, or this way. This is how you can get hold of us. So I think your business as usual messaging, and that is number one. I would be using January to get your Q4 plans done now, because by March or by June, you will have forgotten half of the good stuff. So get your Q4 planning done now. But also use this as an opportunity to really connect and engage with your customer and explore. Adapt your offer to the evolving situation. So think about, we're all consumers. What do we want? We want comfort. You know I'm sick of eating my own food, you know? So for those food retailers and sort of hospitality retailers, you know, what can you do that is going to make life easier for people right now? So that might be help people to care for other people. So can you help them with gift packages for other people? Can you help them with care packages? Can you do afternoon tea deliveries? God, that would be nice. Feel free. Afternoon tea deliveries. You know, over the next 2 months, if we're going to have any sort of social life, it's going to be walking with our own family to a local park. Can you do family picnic boxes? What can you do to make life easier for people now? Because that's a way of really engaging with the customer, and it's a way of also keeping the money coming in. Ramp up your social media. We're all scrolling, you know, we're all scrolling non-stop these days. So really ramp up and lean into your social media. And Duncan and I are both going to commit to open TikTok accounts. Get yourself on Instagram and TikTok. Video. So you may be closed at the moment, but video works. Video works. If you want to take money, use video. And better still, if you want to take a lot of money, use live video. Live video is great cash driver for all types of retail. And then the final thing I would say is remember that while your doors are closed, you're still really well able. You're not being told you can't trade. You're just being told that you need to be able to fulfill. So you need to deliver to the customer. Likewise, if you have a retail estate and you're across the country, start doing your strategy around those larger conurbations now. So you probably need to revalue your estate if you're a larger retailer, because where traditionally, if you're a larger retailer, it's all about the city centres. It's all about Dublin. It's all about Dublin, Cork, Limerick, Galway. But actually, it's now all about Dungarvan, it's all about Clontarf, it's all about Dunleary. So look at where the large conurbations of people are and which parts of your estate are in those areas, and adjust your sales accordingly.
Duncan, your last words of wisdom.
I think what you've just heard from Miriam is stunning stuff and really good. I think there's some fantastic priorities there. I'm only going to add one to that list that she's just talked about, and that's look after your people. And in particular, you know, your leaders of the future. So I think, you know, as I said before, retail has become much more complex. You know, it used to be we opened the doors, laid out a decent looking store, and the customers would come in. We've now got to the touch points with the consumer are now a myriad of touch points. They're enormous. And therefore retail and how you make sure that you've got consistency across all of those touch points, because it's going to be all about your brand. And you can be, you know, you can be opening the doors and have fabulous products, but if what you're offering in terms of your online message is poor or a bit off and doesn't reflect what people are seeing in store, they're going to be turned off by you. You know, if they go and look at your TikTok or your dare I say it, or your you know, your Twitter account or whatever, and it doesn't really reflect what you're trying to do in your business, there's going to be a disconnect. And I think your people are key to this. You know, if you think about what's gone on over the last year, those people that are with you have gone through such an awful lot. They've been on a big journey with you, you know, and we've got to look after them, and we've got to understand the skills that they need over the next year, 18 months, 2 years and beyond are going to be different from the skills they had in 2019 moving into this pandemic. They've gone through an awful lot. They've been incredibly resilient. Now is the time to invest in them and give them all of these skills to be able to move your business onto that next level. So for me, it's all around people is the next step. That's the priority for me.
And can I just add to that? Your consumer is watching you. So if you are treating your people well, your consumer is judging you in a really lovely way and making an emotional decision that they want to support you. I was in a small grocery store, and the member of the team there was regaling to me how amazing the leadership had been in that business. It's one of a small group of stores, and how he'd really looked after the team and really minded them. And I can tell you, everybody in the queue in that store spent a hell of a lot more money, because we were like, oh my God, we've got to support this good guy, do you know? So your customer is watching you, and they will judge you. So if they see a team that's not looked after, they'll judge you. So just to back up what Duncan was saying, look after your people.
Well, Miriam and Duncan, you have looked after our people really well, our participants. You've been really amazing, and thank you so much for spending your time with us this morning. This is all that we have time for on this month's Champion Green webinar. Can I remind everyone that the Champion Green website is regularly updated with new advice, inspiration and resources, and you can also keep in touch on social media with us. As we just heard, we have plenty more time to scroll and engage on social platforms. We'll see you again next month for more practical business advice, and in the meantime, stay in touch, stay safe. Thank you everyone. Thanks a million.